Good evening and welcome to another Tuesday with Tim, an evening to be together in community and sharing in the music that we love. Tonight's program, we're going to open with Ray Vaughan Williams' Oh How Amiable. I've always been intrigued by the title page where it indicates it's an anthem for the dedication of a church or other festivals, originally written for the Avenger pageant 1934. It is dedicated to F.F. Dame Frances Ferrier, who was an effective organizer in the Light Hill Musical Festival and wife of Lord Ferrier, a prominent landowner in the Avenger parish. In 1934, the novelist E.M. Forster wrote The Avenger Pageant, a play about the history of England performed to aid preservation work at a church near where he lived in Surrey. Vaughan Williams' anthem was written to be sung by amateur performers as part of the festivities. It also emphasizes the communal nature of the pageant experience, as does the addition of a verse from the famous hymn, O God, Our Help in Ages Past, at the conclusion. Now, this anthem was written for episode 6 in the pageant, and it's towards our own times. It takes place during Queen Victoria's reign. And so the scene is outside by Avenger Church. And the steward and squire come out of the church while the rector and the farmers arrive to plan for a new church porch. And they look at the plans and sing some verses of the 84th Psalm, How amiable are thy dwellings. And while the psalm is being sung, all the performers of previous scenes assemble on the hill behind, and the hymn, O God, Our Help in Ages Past, concludes the active part of the pageant, followed by the epilogue. One can imagine that Vaughan Williams' only composition for this event must have provided a beautiful conclusion. In spite of the anthem's modest proportions, it effectively conveys the first 4 verses of Psalm 84 and verse 17 of Psalm 90. Now, the original instrumentation was for band. It included piccolo, flutes, oboe, bassoon, clarinets, alto clarinet, bass clarinet, alto and tenor saxophone, baritone saxophone, trumpets, horns, trombones, baritone, euphonium, tubas, string bass, and timpani. And they likely used this military band instrumentation because it was an open-air performance of the pageant. But there must have been quite a large number of singers to balance out the forces of the band. And as mentioned earlier, the choral writing emphasizes that as you hear strong, sturdy vocal sonority. And so as we begin tonight, we're reminded that by Psalm 90 that the glorious majesty of the Lord our God be upon us. Alice Parker wrote, "My 20 years experience with Robert Shaw and immersion in folk music of many kinds has had a profound effect on my own understanding of song. I learned to see each tune as a small universe, setting up its own rules of pitch and rhythm, mood, and dance. If I understand that universe and work within it for my setting, the result is an organic whole that allows the original melody to flourish." So in her programs, I explore the vitality of early American hymns and spirituals, a soaring Irish lament, a saucy Canadian lyric, a lilting French love song, and the nostalgia of familiar Christmas carols. Known as the primary arranger for and collaborator with Robert Shaw for the famed Robert Shaw Chorale, the 223 Parker Shaw arrangements of folk songs, spirituals, and hymns form an enduring repertoire for choruses all around the world. The arrangements were mostly the work of Alice Parker, with Mr. Shaw serving principally as a scrupulous editor. Now, the Parker-Shaw collaboration came about in 1948 when the Robert Shaw Chorale first toured the United States and was signed to an exclusive recording contract by RCA Victor. Shaw wished to record only choral masterworks, but RCA Victor also wanted recordings of the Shaw Chorale performing light, popular music in the hope that these would sell well to the American public and thus fund the chorale's recordings of classical music. As Shaw considered the limited time available in his schedule for producing such arrangements, he remembered Parker's facility in research, her background in composition, and her easygoing temperament. He approached her with the suggestion that she seek out appropriate melodies and texts and compose a series of arrangements that the two could rework together before the recording session. Shaw believed that the best approach would be to produce albums of folk materials that would be both attractive to singers and listeners, as well as inexpensive to produce, since this music is in public domain. And so for the first project of Easter Carols, Parker went to the music division of the New York Public Library and was delighted to find an abundance of melodies and text that suited their needs. Now, during the next few months, Parker prepared a sheaf of sketches, which she played for Shaw at their next meeting. Shaw listened to the whole set, and according to Parker, reworked them in a way more demanding than she had ever seen. Each note, word, and phrase had to be just right. Each voice part had to invite the singer into the phrase. He allowed no splitting of voice parts, no new and interesting harmonizations, no effects for effect's sake. The texts were to be expressed artfully, and the melodies were to be respected for their original beauty. Now, Parker had majored in composition in college, attended Juilliard, but no one, she says, had ever subjected her pieces to this kind of detailed reworking. Parker used this metaphor herself when she said in 1996, "It finally struck me that I'd experienced a medieval-style apprenticeship in Renaissance compositional techniques, a rarity in the 20th century musical world. I had learned the craft of writing for voices which, in a strange and wonderful way, released my own compositional ideas." Coming forward to Be Thou My Vision, often these older hymns come to us as a collaborative effort before we're able to sing them from our hymnals or anthems. The Irish text was originally translated into literal prose by Irish scholar Mary Byrne in the beginning of the 20th century. She's a Dublin native and ultimately published the text in the Journal of the School of Irish Learning in 1905. She was also known for her academic publications, including Old and Mid-Irish Dictionary, Dictionary of the Irish Language, and a treatise, England in the Age of Chaucer. The original prose translation comes to us in 16 couplets. The first is, "Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, none other is aught but the King of the seven heavens." And the last is, "O heart of my heart, whate'er befall me, O ruler of all, be thou my vision. It is at this point that Eleanor Hall enters the story. Born in Manchester, England, she was the founder of the Irish Text Society and president of the Irish Literary Society of London. Hall versified the text, and it was published in her poem book of the Gael, 1912. Following the original publication in Ireland, the hymn was included in a number of British hymnals. After World War II, the hymn came to the attention of hymnal editors in the United States and has become a standard hymn in most hymnals today. Irish liturgy and ritual scholar Helen Phelan, a lecturer at the University of Limerick, points out how the language of this hymn is drawn from traditional Irish culture. One of the essential characteristics of the text is the use of heroic imagery to describe God. This was very typical of medieval Irish poetry, which cast God as the chieftain or high king who provided protection to his people or clan. Though Rorica is one of the most popular forms of this kind of protection prayer and is very prevalent in texts of the period, the original chieftain language of the high king of heaven has given way to the more inclusive great God in some hymnals. When Hall's versification was paired with the lovely traditional Irish tune Slain in the Irish church hymnal in 1919, its popularity was sealed. Folk melody was taken from a non-liturgical source, Patrick Weston Joyce's Old Irish Folk Music and Songs, a collection of 842 airs and songs, unpublished. Most traditional Irish religious songs are non-liturgical, says Dr. Phelan. There was a long-standing practice of editorial weddings in Irish liturgical music, where traditional tunes were wedded to more liturgically appropriate texts. This is a very good example of this practice. So if we go back in time, it was on Slane Hill in County Meath around 433 CE that St. Patrick lit candles on Easter Eve, defying a decree by High King Loger of Tara that no one could light a fire before the king, signaled the beginning of the pagan spring festival by lighting a fire on Tara Hill. King Loger was so impressed by Patrick's devotion that, despite his defiance, he was permitted to continue his work as Ireland's first Christian missionary. Be thou my vision. Next, we turn to There Is a Balm in Gilead, another William Dawson, arranger of Negro folk song, his preferred name. I gave a lengthy biography about him on the October 1st Tuesdays with Tim, so I want to just move straight to the music. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain, but then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. Few chapters in the Bible may have resonated with the souls of enslaved Africans in North America as Jeremiah 8 did. Israel was in exile. The Babylonians were preparing to violate their holy places for treasure, dishonoring their dead. And this is a chapter of judgment and hopelessness. And the exiled Jews are forced to live away in a far country. They wondered what they had done to deserve this. It's the most desperate and despondent time in Israel's history. And then the chapter ends with these three rhetorical questions. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then is not the health of the daughter of my people recovered? The refrain of this spiritual offers encouragement and dares to respond with hope in the face of hopelessness, showing courage in the face of despair. African-American theologian Howard Thurman discusses the refrain of the spiritual. The slave caught the mood of this spiritual dilemma and with it did an amazing thing. He straightened the question mark in Jeremiah's sentence into an exclamation point. There is a balm in Gilead. Here is the note of creative triumph. So Howard Thurman suggests the message for today extends beyond the individual to a hope for healing in the experience of all humanity, writing, yet in times of even temporary cessation from struggle, or in times of greatest conflict, the dream of peace continues to nourish the hope of the race. The dream persists, even though we do not know what peace on earth would be like, because it has never been experienced. Hope is fed by a conviction deeper than the processes of thought that the destiny of humanity is good. And this note of this creative triumph in the face of despair is the reason this spiritual holds a secure place in the canon of African-American spirituals in hymnals today. Another theologian suggests Jesus is truly the balm of Gilead for all the hurting people of the world. When J.C. Philpott preached on Jeremiah 8 in 1852, he pointed out that God's grace is always greater than our sin, writing, "There is more in the balm to heal than there is in guilt to wound. For there is more in grace to save than there is in sin to destroy." If we know Jesus, we're going to heaven because his grace is far greater than our sin. The song River in Judea is not necessarily referring to the Jordan River specifically. However, the deeper parallel symbolism of the song alludes to the Jordan River and the relation of the believer to Christ through baptism. Water is a huge symbolic language in the New Testament, especially in the Gospel of John. The river that freely flows is an allusion to salvation found in Jesus Christ, and the song uses such parallelism to remind the believer of being washed from sin and thus walking through life in the fullness of hope in Christ. The phrase, "it rests on the Sabbath day," stands out. The resting river is a state of being still before God and listening to the guiding voice. Hence the sound, the voice of the singing, ringing river is consolation and relief to the believer. When weary, she drinks from the river. The parallel here being the wells of salvation. River in Judea. The next piece, If I Got My Ticket, I picked it because it's a song of salvation. I love the call and response that happens in the text. The questioning, if I got my ticket, Lord, can I ride? Can I ride? And it continues until we hear, that gospel train is coming for me, and the promised land I'll gain. Oh, I'll hear them wheels a-humming, my Lord. I'm ready to board that train. And yet the questions continue. If I got my ticket, can I ride? No, I've been converted. I ain't gonna make no alarm, for my soul is bound to Jesus, my Lord, and the devil can't do me no harm. Let me ride, Lord. Let me ride. In 1791, the last year of his life, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart made several visits to Baden, a spa town located 16 miles southwest of Vienna. Constance Mozart, ill and pregnant, spent the summer months at the Baden resort where her health gradually improved. During his visits with Constance at Baden, as well as previous visits in 1789 and 1790, Mozart became friendly with Anton Stoll, school teacher and choir master at the parish church of St. Stephen. Ave Verum, composed on June 17th, 1791, was this exquisite little motet, a departure from the Requiem that he was presently composing. And the motet was written for the feast of Corpus Christi. and he actually dedicated the work to Anton Stoll. Scored for SATB chorus, strings, and organ, the motet was repeated on July 10th at the Stephankirche with Mozart conducting. A plaque commemorating the creation of Ave Verum Corpus, the most well-regarded of Mozart's small-scale liturgical works, may be seen at that parish church in Baden. This beautiful, simplistic, serene anthem reminds us of Christ's sacrifice on the cross, and it paints a picture of otherworldly peace and transcendent. Thank you for, again, joining us this week for a moment to pause, to enjoy music together, to be in community. Previous Tuesdays with Tim are on YouTube for your enjoyment, to go back and visit. If you're receiving the email advertisement each week, it's in the header. Next week, we'll actually be featuring the first concert of the Music Transforms series, featuring string quartet with a quartet both by Mozart as well as by Dvorak. So I hope you'll tune in next week to hear that program. Thank you. It's great to be with you this evening. God bless you.